Today, we're going to talk about Keynes.
And the true genius of John Maynard Keynes.
Professor Keynes was...
Keynes really represents the pinnacle of economic science.
I am a Keynesian economist.
Now, what does such a world-renowned economist do in his leisure time? From his youth, Keynes was a very troubled boy. According to various accounts, he counted and tabulated everything, like a good accountant would do. He was destined to be an economist, from the number of steps on his neighbor's front porch to his golf scores and monetary expenses, and even his sexual endeavors. Keynes kept 2 sexual diaries to dutifully record every aspect of his sex life, and like a good economist, organized his diaries by fiscal year and quarterly increments. The first sex diary records the names of his sexual partners, but gives no details as to what act was performed. Easy to decipher, this diary usually lists partners by their initials. For example, D.G. was Duncan Grant, a man Keynes met in 1908 and had an affair with for several years. Others are listed by either their nickname or, if it was a casual encounter, by various descriptive details, such as 16-year-old under Etna, lift boy of Vauxhall, or Jew boy. The second diary proves more difficult to decipher, but a healthy imagination won't have too many problems. For every quarter, there is a tally of sexual encounters under 3 different categories, C, A, and W. C is consistently higher in all quarters, reaching around 16 to 20 times per quarter, and A and W are significantly less. Theories abound as to what each category represents, but you can use your imagination. At the end of each quarter, Keynes would tally up his total scores for C, A, and W, and then give himself a grade, usually ranging between 65 and 100 for his performance. Though most of his scores were in the 70s and 80s, a few did reach into the 90s, and one particularly was at 104. That was probably the one that gave him the heart attack of 1937. Perhaps Keynes learned his rigorous accounting techniques from another great economist, Jeremy Bentham, father of behaviorism, who in his great treatise, Offenses Against Oneself, better known as In Defense of Pederasty, in which Bentham numerically categorized, in his own words, all of the diverse means of procuring certain sensations by means of an improper object, into 5 categories.
1. Of the proper species, but at an improper time, for instance, after death. 2. Of an object of the proper species and sex, and at a proper time, but in an improper part. 3. Of an object of the proper species, but the wrong sex. This is distinguished from the rest by the name of pederasty. 4. Of the wrong species. 5. In procuring this sensation by oneself without the help of any other sensitive object.
Keynes even took his theories and philosophy into the realm of his greatest economic works. In his general theory of employment, interest, and money, Keynes shows just how much the animal spirit influences economic behavior.
Even apart from the instability due to speculation, there is the instability due to the characteristic of human nature that a large proportion of our positive activities depend on spontaneous optimism rather than mathematical expectations, whether moral or hedonistic or economic. Most, probably, of our decisions to do something positive, the full consequences of which will be drawn out over many days to come, can only be taken as the result of animal spirits, a spontaneous urge to action rather than inaction, and not as the outcome of a weighted average of quantitative benefits multiplied by quantitative probabilities.
Keynes's great economic works, such as the one just heard, were based in a tradition of the most respected scientific methods, those of Isaac Newton.
Newton was not the first of the age of reason. He was the last of the magicians, the last of the Babylonians and Sumerians. Here, indeed, is the makings of a legend of the young magician, a most joyous picture of the opening mind of genius, free from the uneasiness, the melancholy, and nervous agitation of the young man and student. For, in vulgar modern terms, Newton was profoundly neurotic, of a not unfamiliar type, but, I should say from the records, a most extreme example. His deepest instincts were occult, esoteric, semantic, with profound shrinking from the world, a paralyzing fear of exposing his thoughts, his beliefs, his discoveries in all the nakedness of the inspection and criticism of the world. Like all of his type, he was wholly aloof from women.
Now we see why Keynes was so enamored by the physics, or physique, of Isaac Newton. So for those who advocate economic growth packages, stimulus bills, liquidity pumping, or pump priming today, we must ask, what does it really mean to call yourself a Keynesian?